Okay, so we're COMP2068, and it's week 3, lesson 3, part 1. And we're going to talk about assignment number 1, which is due next week on Friday night, Friday before midnight. So you get about a week to do this, okay? It's valued 10% of your final, right? It's not a crazy assignment. The craziest part of it is the documentation and the storyline that you're going to be creating, all right? So let's take a look and see what this thing is. So we're going to use the Dragon game site files provided on GitHub. Let's go there and show you where that is. If I go to my GitHub, and I would invite you to go there with me right now, under my repository, there is a repo called the Dragon. Somewhere down here. There it is. Here's the Dragon. I want you to fork this repo, please. This is the first thing for today, right? So remember we did that forking. Just click on this button, fork the repo, make it part of your own. What this thing does, I'm just going to launch, while we're waiting for this, I'm just going to launch my virtual machine at the same time so we can see what it looks like. It is, like I said, interactive fiction, right? Now this is the same thing, even though it says COMP2068, it's really it's for you guys as well. So, and COMP2068. So you guys share it with this other class that I'm doing, right? So, more or less it's the same kind of assignment. There he is. There's the big guy. What's up? Welcome. All right, so if you actually run this thing, take a look, download it, right? And I'd like you to run it. So if you can download the zip file if you want, after you take it down, it's pretty easy. We're going to use this API called Impress.js. And actually, if you go up on my website here, or on my GitHub site, if I actually can get there in a second without being delayed. If I go to my repositories, I've actually forked the Impress.js framework, right? So this is a fork of this guy's framework, right? It's a presentation framework that this guy Bartaz kind of put together. So if you actually go on my site, you should see it, and you should be able to fork it as well from me. So Impress.js is what we're going to be using today. Again, we're going to digress a little bit from the stuff we were doing last day. It's in order for us to get this, and there's a reason, because what I want you guys to set up is the documentation you require for your assignment number 1, and then once you get the documentation requirements down, assignment 2, assignment 3, all these other assignments we're going to be doing, you know what to do from a documentation perspective. So, because part of your final is going to be documentation, so I don't want to discount it. I want to talk about it with you guys. Okay, so hopefully you've got this already. If I go to my Visual Studio here for a second, I've got the same thing. I got the Dragon here on my GitHub. I just call it the Dragon. And let's take a look and see what it looks like together. If I run this thing, I'm just going to open the solution by double-clicking on the SLN file here. And I'm going to wait till it loads. And if you notice, there's not much to it, right? There's not much to it. Here's what it is. So you get a bit of a code base. So when I run this thing, it goes like this. You are in a planet full of dragons. In front of you, you see 2 caves. In one cave, the dragon is friendly and will share his treasure with you. And the dragon is greedy and hungry and will eat you in the other cave, right? So which one is it? Which cave do you go into? Cave 1 or cave 2? Huh? Cave 2? Let's get cave 2. I guess I hear cave 2. Let's go to cave 2. Hey, you approach the cave. It is bright and cheerful. A large white dragon approaches you and gives you his treasure. Huh? Let's start over. Hold on. Let's go to cave 1 now, right? And what does it do? You approach the dragon. It is dark and spooky. A large red dragon jumps out in front of you. He opens his jaws and gobbles you down with one bite. Right? There's only two outcomes here. Right? Both of them are, pretty simple. One of them is a positive outcome. The other one's a negative outcome. So this is the code base. You get to use this code base to create your own little story. All right? And this is what this show is all about today. Let's take a look at this assignment. So the Dragon game files we just looked at, it's provided on GitHub as your template, right? You're going to create both an internal and external document for the site. An internal document means you have to comment inside your code to make sure that it's correct, right? Ensure you follow documentation best practices and use the external documentation template provided. The external documentation template is on Blackboard, right? And it looks like this. Well, guess what? You need to create a company logo. For those people who've been with me before, you probably have a company logo, right? So you can reuse your company logo for your document. But if you haven't, if you're not with me before, this is your first time, like most of you, then you need to create one, right? So you need to put a company logo in here, and the name of your your fantasy indie company that you're creating, right? Your fictional one, right? So this logo represents you. Now, if you're not a designer, you're going to say, Tom, I'm not a designer. How do I make a bloody logo, right? It could be your initials stylized. What I don't want you to do, it's got to be original. I don't want you to take somebody else's logo and mash it up and call it your own, like a face of a famous celebrity or something crazy like that. Don't do that. People have done these things in the past. It's got to represent you. It's got to be original. It could be simple, but it's got to be all about you. All right? So logo is important. And then you've got your document title, which would be whatever your document's going to be. It's going to be based on your game that you're going to make here. Right? We're going to make a little simple game. Well, it's going to start very slow. Right? Your copyright template obviously should say 2015, not 2012. I've been using this thing since 2011, actually. The same document that actually Microsoft provided for their XNA game external documentation framework. Right? So here's a table of contents. So talk about the actual document itself. And then a version history. Your version history could be a copy of your commit history from GitHub, right? That's perfectly fine. And
do we get the commit history in GitHub?
You get a commit history in GitHub, but I want you to take that commit history and convert it into like a little version history that mirrors what you see on GitHub. All right? So it's like, here's all your commits, what you did, and you might call them versions, version 1, version 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and so on your version history, and then you can see, of course, where you've come, how you've created your game. This is the same workflow we're going to be using for larger games, right? So you need to know how to do it here with your external documentation, as you'll see. There's some stuff in these square brackets. It says this is the body of your web video game design document. Get rid of it. This is just instructions on what to do. Please don't leave this in your document. And by the way, you can also color the background of your document, make it your own, so it matches up with your indie company, whatever it's going to be, right? So if you've already got this kind of idea, or if you have some colors you want to use for your document because it's going to match up with your independent little company we're making, you go ahead and do so, right? This is your document, right, that you're going to be reusing over and over again as we make new games, right? Now you might say, hey, Tom, how does this relate to the web? I'm never going to make games, right? And we're doing advanced web stuff here, right? Well, in real life web design, you're going to be creating a style guide, right? And in many ways, this is what you need. You need an external document to go along with your website 99.9% of the time when you deal with a client. If you're a small guy and you're doing a website for a friend, you might say, well, Tom, I don't need to do it for him, do I? Recommended that this might be a great place to start from a design perspective. Okay, so this is where you start off conceptualizing your game. Yes? It's on Blackboard under your assignment 1 files. You'll see if you go to assignment 1, there's a couple files there. One is the assignment file itself, as well as the external document. Okay, and so some of these sections, like for example, game overview, you're going to need. Gameplay mechanics, you probably don't need too much mechanics here. All it is you're going to manipulate the PowerPoint presentation that's online, so to speak. And we'll talk about that in a second. Your camera you probably won't need. So take sections out that you don't need and only include sections in your internal document that make sense. Okay, that's what I want you to do. And there's several other sections. So you may not need all these. Don't leave them in here blank. All right, if I see blank sections in your document, you're going to lose marks. Your document should only be something that describes the current game you're working on. So if something doesn't apply here, remove it, please. Okay, it's only a template. Huh? 10%. Okay, so that's the external document. Going back to the assignment. So the Dragon game files on GitHub. You should already have pulled that down. You should already fork those by now, if you go on my site. You've got the framework if you want to make your own stuff, which we're going to do by hand here, right? You're going to create an external document, and you're going to internally document your code, right? We're going to talk about that a little bit. And you're going to follow documentation best practices when you use your external document template, which means I don't want you to your document to be ugly. It's got to include all the piece parts that I'm looking for. All right? Currently, the site only gives the player the choice of going cave 1 or cave 2. But for your game, I want you to have extend the functionality, right, to include 2 more decision levels. Okay, let's talk about what that means. So example, after going into cave 1, the player is given the option to turn right or left. That's the second decision level. He chooses left and proceeds to the inner cave, where he chooses to fight the dragon to try and convince the dragon to spare his life. One of the 2. Third decision level, right? So here's what it would look like. So if you look at, this is the original place, turn left or turn right, or go to left cave or right cave. That's the first decision level. We've already kind of mapped that out. The second decision level, let's say, would be over here. He goes to the left, he sees the red dragon, and the red dragon has a hoard of treasure, right? There's 2 things you can do. Maybe if you're going to do the dragon thing, you can go try and sneak by the dragon. Maybe the dragon's sleeping in this particular case. You're making your own story here. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the dragon story. I want you to make your own story, right? So if you're going to make a dragon story, I get a dragon story back from you, not good. All right, make up your own thing. This is your own story. Use your creativity. So let's say you go to the left. In my story, I go to the left. I go to the dragon. Instead of seeing a red dragon there that's going to gobble me up, I see a red dragon and he's sleeping, right? And you know what? I have 2 choices. I can go try sneak by his tail, right? Or I can sneak by the treasure, right? Either way, no matter what I do, if I sneak by the tail or sneak by the treasure, right? I have another decision node. I sneak by the tail. As I approach the tail, I notice there's a sword, right? Do I pick the sword up, or do I still try and sneak over around the tail? The tail's kind of looping around. I have to jump over it. Well, no matter what happens, if you notice these outcomes, I die, right? In fact, there's only one way to win, and it's this positive path, the path of positive outcomes, which I've kind of named here, right? I only want you to have 1 positive outcome, and the other 7, so total of 8 outcomes, the other 7, you die or you get captured or something bad happens to you. If you don't like death, you might have to, you lose your way, but you lose the game pretty much, right? So there's only one way to win. Any questions around that? Yes. Why don't you what? Because I'm asking you not to. I'm telling you to do only one way to win. There's only one positive outcome. You've got to decide that. Now, some people might say, what if I want to make it random? Can I make the positive outcome random? Yeah. That's okay, but it's still only going to be one positive outcome. It's going to be the same positive outcome that's random, right? So maybe you're going to go to a decision node, but when you go left, it's another left, as opposed to the left you took last time when you played this game, right? Some other path, so the game changes. But at the end of the day, the only way the person can win is this one way. If it's multiple ways, right? So, for example, he can win like in 8 different ways. You lose. You're going to lose marks. I only want one possible way for you to win. Every other way you go in this maze, this labyrinth that you're making, you'll lose. Okay, and there's got to be at least 8 outcomes and at least 3 decision levels. If you want to make the decision levels 4 deep, 5 deep, 6 deep in some areas, that's fine. But at the minimum, there's got to be at least this many nodes. I'm looking at right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 nodes with 8 possible outcomes. If you want to make 9, 10, 12 nodes, that's up to you. The more nodes you make, there's a higher chance for you to get more marks, but it's going to take longer for you to write. right? So don't write yourself into a hole here. You know, there's only so much time we have. We only have a week to do all this. Okay, let's take a look. So again, from a marking perspective, let's look at the actual functionality piece, right? So you add 2 decision levels to the game for a total of 8 possible outcomes. This is the minimum requirements. So if you want to add more, that's up to you, like I said. Look at the diagram above, right? It's worth 14 marks for functionality. Each decision level will allow the player to at least 2 choices, right? Okay, that's one of the requirements. Only 1 positive outcome is possible for the player. That's worth 2 marks. If you give more than 1 positive outcome, you lose 2 marks right away. This document, if you take it, you can mark yourself. It tells you where all your marks are coming from. It's very clear, right? There's not a place in the document that you're going to go, so Tom, how come I lost these marks? Well, it's right there. You give me more than 1 outcome, right? As an example. Or you didn't do so many decision levels, so you're going to lose marks for that. Here's an option. You may allow the player to go back to the previous node or cross laterally to a node on the same level, right? Going back, you're not going to get a lot of bonus marks for that. Crossing laterally, though, that might be something that I might give you a little bit of marks for if you do it in a very smart way, and it has to kind of align with your story, right? Crossing laterally can confuse the crap out of players, right? Because they go across the path and then they find themselves somewhere they would have been if they took a different path. Right? That's what crossing laterally is all about, right? You may allow the player to find special items to help him win, like, for example, a sword, right? And he has to have that sword. He has to have done that choice, gone through that path, picked up the sword in order for him to win, right? And if he doesn't have that sword, even if he takes the right path to the outcome, if he hasn't picked up that sword, you do a check, and then he loses. He goes to another lose path, right? Again, it's an option that I'll give you bonus marks for. It's outside of our requirements. It's something that you can add for additional marks. Okay? That's it for functionality, 14 marks. Let's take a look at the marks for documentation, though. Internally, it's 12 marks for documentation. So you're going to get almost as many marks for documenting your code as you're going to get for making it work right now internally. So ensure your program has a header that includes your source file name, your author's name, last modified by, date last modified, program description. If you don't put these things in there, you're going to lose marks at the top of your header of your program, right? Ensure your program uses contextual variable names that help make the program human readable. If you're going to use variables for whatever, like for example, does he have a sword or not? Make sure they're contextual. If you don't use them, you're not going to lose any marks for documentation. Ensure you include inline comments that describe the conditional structure you use for your decision tree matrix. So when you create your HTML code, include inline comments. 12 marks. Here's the big one. Your external document is worth 10 marks, right? So if you don't do your external document and you don't do your internal documentation and you just make this thing work, you won't pass, right? This is not about making the simple program work. This is about making sure you understand documentation best practices, putting together your external document. What do I need for your external document? A company logo, 2 marks, just to make that up. So if you already have one and you put it in your internal document, that's 2 marks, right? If you don't include one, gone, 2 marks missing. Table of contents, 2 marks. Version history, 2 marks. Your version history you can get from Github, right? And there's actually a Github component here too. A detailed game description, right? Describing each node and any possible outcomes. So maybe what you want to do is describe your own node, make it your own little sitemap of what each of the nodes does. So here, if the player chooses this, it's death. Here's another choice, it leads to death. Here's a third choice, it leads to death. Describe your game, right? Talk about how the player can win and lose. And then 4, share your files on GitHub. If you just put your files on GitHub as an afterthought, like you didn't think about it, you're planning your game, oh damn, I forgot to put my Excite files on GitHub. Oh, here they are, right? You only get 2 marks. If you put your files on GitHub and you have it part of your workflow, so just like we were talking about, like you sync up to GitHub every time you do a milestone, right? Then not only do you satisfy your GitHub requirements, but you'll satisfy your version history requirements up here. So it's actually worth like 6 marks just to do versioning, all right? I also want you to make this, it doesn't say it, but you will lose marks if you don't make this game live, right? Now you can use the web server here at the school. You can use your I.O. pages that you get free if you go to GitHub. You can search that up. You can make your own I.O. page is what it's called, right? So you can host it free on GitHub. but it has to be hosted somewhere. You can also buy your own domain, like we talked about last time, right? Buy your own domain, call it what you want, and it's $10 a year for most times if you make it a CA domain. And you can pay for hosting, which is probably less than $10 a month. It's not a big cost, right, for you to do this. So again, we haven't talked about books for the course. I'm not making you buy any books or anything like that. But from a materials perspective, this is the only thing one of the only things I'd ask you. The other thing we talked about was Texture Packer, which I've recommended that you get, right, that you buy. We haven't started that yet, but you will need that, and it's something that you eventually have to pay for. So a couple of things to pay for. One of them is definitely a website if you want to do that. You don't have to. You can definitely use the school's website if you don't have the wherewithal to do it on your own. Okay, so how do you submit your work? An external document, it has to be Word or PDF, please. No open document format. I will not accept it. So if I see that, if I get a text document, I won't accept it. RTF, I won't accept it. It's got to be Word or PDF. That's it. That's all I'm accepting. All right? Link to your project files on GitHub. Okay? I do not want all your zip files, as an example. If you're going to zip it up and put it on submit it to me on Blackboard, you can, right, as a backup. Like somehow your GitHub's not working, which is impossible, right? GitHub is the way I want you to do it. It's the preferred method. Worst case scenario, and if you're afraid, I can't link to it somehow or whatever, you can certainly put it up on Blackboard in a zip format. Please don't send me files to my email. I will refuse them, right? Please don't send me your work at all to my email address, right? I won't open it, and it won't count. It has to be through Blackboard. That's where we're going to be doing it, right? It's due next Friday, right? Next Friday, not this Friday, next Friday. Obviously, tomorrow's Friday, right? It's worth 10% of your mark. Every day late, 10% deduction. Okay, no extensions. Just letting you know in advance. This is not an assignment that's going to take you a million years to do, but you need to start on it today. All right, so it's something that you need to basically get going with. The biggest piece of this is the external document, right? And it's understanding how to put things together. I'm not asking you to sketch anything yet. You will. Eventually, other applications we're going to make, games, are going to require you to make an external document with a sketch. So next week, I'm probably going to give you assignment 2, right? So please get this one done so that you have your assignments worth 10% of your grade, and it's going to be something that we're going to be moving forward with from here on in. Any questions before I shut this one down? So assignment number 1, due next week. That's Friday, January 30th at midnight. 1 minute after midnight, 10%.